A bastard has no place in family vacations. My father's words echoed through the living room as he shut his silver suitcase without glancing at me once. At that exact moment, I knew something inside me had shattered forever. Rachel, my stepmother, walked past, her high heels tapping rhythmically against the wooden floor. She carried a pale pink suitcase, matching the room her daughter Haley had chosen when she turned 16. It was also the age when I, Flora, realized I would never truly belong in this house. I was 24. The daughter from my father, Thomas Bennett's first marriage. My mother died when I was 8. 2 years later, he remarried. And from then on, I learned that being someone's child and belonging were two entirely different things. Flora, can you help me carry these suitcases to the car? Rachel called, her voice sweet but hollow. She always spoke to me like that, a gentle tone covering thinly veiled contempt. Haley's packing for our Europe trip, she added, lips curling in smug satisfaction. Europe. 2 weeks in Paris, Rome and Barcelona, a trip they had been planning for 8 months, ever since my father received an unexpected inheritance from his late uncle in Connecticut. 8 months of talk about Michelin restaurants, Paris museums, and hotels with balconies overlooking the Seine. And 8 months of me hearing, over and over, that only 3 tickets had been bought. Money has to be spent wisely, Flora, my father said back in March, eyes fixed on his Wall Street Journal. 3 people, 3 tickets. You understand, right? I always understood. I understood that when they said family, it didn't include me. That when Rachel cooked family dinner, it meant just Haley. That I was tolerated, never loved. I picked up the suitcase Rachel pointed to. Heavy, new, expensive, clearly ordered just for the trip. June sunlight burned against my face, but inside I felt frozen, that familiar chill that always came whenever I heard laughter from the living room and realized they were watching a family movie without me. Cold like the birthdays where I got a tiny cake while Haley had full restaurant parties. Cold like every time I discovered I was the last to know everything. Flora, are you sure you'll be okay? Rachel asked, adjusting her gold earrings. 2 weeks alone in the house sounds a bit strange. I'll be fine, I replied shortly. Haley came down the stairs, all smiles, her golden hair tossed perfectly behind her shoulders. 19, beautiful, confident, adored the perfect blend of both parents. Dad, the hotel in Paris has such a pretty view, she chirped, waving her iPhone. My father looked at her with a softness I had never seen directed at me. My princess is going to the most romantic city in the world, he said, kissing her forehead. It'll be the trip of a lifetime. Princess. And me? I was just Flora. No nickname, no affection, no gaze at all. Flora. He finally turned to me. The house keys on the table. There's some cash in the fridge for the next 2 weeks. Don't make a mess. As if I were 8 again, not a grown woman working part-time at a bookstore to pay for her own tuition. Dad, I could pay for my own ticket. I have some savings, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Rachel paused mid-pack. Haley looked up from her phone. My father frowned, that mix of irritation and embarrassment he always wore whenever I dared to ask for something beyond my place. Flora, he said slowly, like teaching a child a moral lesson. It's not about money. This is a family trip. You understand the difference, don't you? Rachel smiled, soft and cruel. 3 people is the perfect number, don't you think? 3 is always harmonious. And then he said it, the sentence I would remember forever, the one that broke my world apart. A bastard has no place in family vacations. A bastard. Not my daughter. Not Flora. As if I were a mistake, a stain on their perfect picture. Rachel lowered her head, pretending to be shocked, but I could tell she had known he would say it. Haley glanced at me, her eyes mixed with pity and relief. Pity that I was humiliated. Relief that it wasn't her. Thomas, Rachel murmured softly. Necessary, he said. She needs to know her place. The world won't pamper her. Let's go, he said, slamming the trunk shut. The flight leaves in 3 hours. I stood there, watching the black SUV, the same car my mother had bought with the money from selling her apartment before she died, drive away from the driveway. Haley rolled down the window and waved. Bye, Flora. Don't forget to take care of the house. Take care of the house. Like an order for a maid, not a daughter. The car disappeared down the street. I stepped back inside. The house suddenly felt vast and eerily silent. I sat on the couch, the same spot I had spent 16 years pressed into the corner, making room for the family. I looked around, noticing for the first time, in every photo on the walls, I was in only a few and always at the edge of the frame. For the first time, the house was completely mine, no one to order, no one to judge, but I had never felt so alone. I walked into the kitchen. On the fridge door, held by a magnet shaped like the Eiffel Tower, an ironic souvenir for the trip I wasn't part of, was a handwritten note from Rachel. Flora instructions for the next 2 weeks. Water the balcony plants. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Take out the trash. Tuesday, Thursday. Clean the house at least once a week. Do not enter Dad's office. No guests unless approved. In case of emergency, call Mrs. Rose next door. I crumpled the note and threw it into the trash, then picked it back up, smoothed it out, and placed it neatly on the table. Not because I accepted those instructions, but because I needed to remember. To remember how they saw me. To remember the word my father had said this morning. A bastard. For the first time since my mother died, I cried. I cried for 15 years of silent humiliation. For forgotten birthdays and cheaper Christmas gifts. For the 8-year-old who lost her mother and was gifted a family that only tolerated her out of obligation. For the young woman still foolish enough to believe that if she were good enough, one day she'd be loved. My eyes drifted toward the hallway leading to my father's office, the forbidden room no one but him had ever entered. Do not enter Dad's office. The warning echoed in my mind, but this time, it didn't stop me. It provoked me. When someone calls you a bastard, maybe it's time to start acting like one. I stood up. My footsteps echoed across the wooden floor, filling the empty house. Each step drew me closer to the dark wooden door, its golden handle gleaming under the ceiling light. I hesitated for a moment, then turned it. The latch clicked softly, like a breath. Behind it was a world I had never seen before. My father's office was larger than I imagined. 3 of its walls were lined with walnut shelves full of books, mostly law, finance, and a few classic novels placed there just for show. In the middle of the room stood a large desk covered in brown leather, everything arranged with a level of precision that felt almost lifeless. The scent of leather blended with my father's woody cologne, the air thick with power, discipline, and secrets. I walked around the desk, running my fingers across the cold wooden surface, a feeling both foreign and strangely familiar. 2 rows of drawers locked tight. A leather planner lay open to the month of June. The coming days were marked in red. Europe trip, family. 3 people. A family of 3, a place where I clearly didn't belong. How many decisions about my life had been made in this room? How many times had my name been mentioned as a burden, a problem to fix, a duty to fulfill? I tried opening a drawer locked, the other one locked too. I looked around. A row of shelves filled with folders, the top lined with neatly stacked papers. I pulled up a chair, climbed, and reached for one stack. The first file, my father's company documents. The second, house utilities and tax bills. I was about to put them down when a yellowed sheet tucked between them caught my eye. Title deed, 127 Magnolia Street, Charleston. Owner's name, Helena March Bennett. My mother's name, the house I'd been treated like a guest in for 15 years, was hers. I collapsed onto the floor, hands trembling. Beside it was another document, last will and testament. Below it, a sealed envelope in handwriting I instantly recognized. For my daughter, Flora. I opened it. The paper was aged, but the handwriting remained steady, gentle, unmistakably my mother's. My dearest Flora, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there, and you're old enough to understand. This house belongs to you. Always has. When I inherited it from your grandparents, I had it legally transferred to your name. You were 5 then. I also established a trust fund under your father's management until you turned 25. Flora, Your father loves you in his own complicated way. But if one day you feel like you don't belong here, remember by law, this house is yours. Don't let anyone make you feel like a stranger in your own home. The legal papers are in the wall safe behind the bookshelf. The code is your birthday 0804. Use them when you need to. Love you, Mom Helena. I read it 3 times, then a 4th, then a 5th, until every word was carved into my mind. This house was mine. For 2 years. I had lived here like a guest. My father knew. He managed the trust. He signed every document. He knew yet still let me believe I was being allowed to stay. Rachel knew too. How could she marry a man without knowing the house belonged to his daughter from a previous marriage? And still, she ordered me to clean it, scolded me for making a mess in my own home. And Haley? She grew up believing I lived off my father's generosity, that I was the half-sister leeching off the family. Was she deceived or complicit? I went to the shelves of law books. I ran my fingers along their spines until I felt a small gap behind them. I pressed gently, and there it was. A wall safe. My birthday. A soft click. The safe opened. Inside were all the documents, the will, the property deed, the trust fund contract, and a bank book in my name. I flipped it open. Deposits my mother had made for 3 years, which had accrued interest for over $28,400. Money that was mine that I had never known about. For 15 years, I was the bastard with no place in the family. I never knew I was the legal owner of the house they lived in. And I had enough money to travel to Europe 10 times, to attend a private college, to live independently, yet I'd been deceived into believing I was poor, useless, and should be grateful. I folded my mother's letter, placed my hand on the will, and whispered, "Mom, they took everything from me, but I'll take it back. One piece at a time." I grabbed my phone and did a quick calculation. In 1 year, when I turned 25, I would gain full control of the trust fund. 2 years to decide what to do with this truth. Or, maybe I didn't have to wait that long. I looked around the office with new eyes. It was no longer the sanctuary of a powerful father. It was just another room inside my house, a place where someone had exploited my trust for 15 years. I carefully placed the documents back in the safe but took photos of every page, clear proof of the truth they'd hidden. Then I sat in his chair, spun it once, and looked at the room from a new angle. This was no longer where someone else decided my life. It was where I would begin to reclaim it. I opened his planner. Work schedules, personal notes, family birthdays. Haley's birthday May note, gift, $400. My birthday April not recorded at all, $400 for Haley. And me? My gifts rarely exceeded 20, always with the same line, "You should be grateful. Money doesn't grow on trees." Money doesn't grow on trees, yet it had been multiplying for 15 years in a bank account under my name, secretly managed by the man who called me a bastard. I closed the planner and stood up. There was too much to process, too much to plan. They would return in 2 weeks, sun-kissed, happy, expecting to find obedient, grateful Flora bowing to her place once more. But I wasn't that girl anymore, not after what I'd discovered. I walked to the kitchen, took Rachel's instruction list, and read each line again. Water the balcony, plants the balcony of my house. Clean the house at least once a week, my house. Do not enter Dad's office. No guests unless approved. The irony was so absurd I almost laughed. I grabbed a pen and added one more line at the bottom. P.S. Thank you for taking care of my house while I was away. I hope you enjoyed your trip funded by the trust of the so-called bastard. I folded the note. Not yet, but soon. Very soon, I would be the one setting the rules in this house, the house that had always been mine. I would decide who deserved a place in the next family vacation. For now, I had 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare, to plan, to decide how the bastard would become the rightful owner. In every sense of the word. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun between disbelief and a quiet, rising storm. Every old memory took on a new meaning. Now that I knew the truth, every humiliation, Every moment I'd felt like an outsider, every thank you for being allowed to stay, had all happened inside my own home, paid for with my money. The next morning, I decided to do something I'd never dared to do before. Explore the entire house. Not as a tolerated child, but as the rightful owner entitled to know every corner of her property. I started with my own room, a small, cramped space with a tiny window facing the backyard. For years, I had accepted it without question, grateful to have a place to sleep. But as I walked down the hallway, I realized my room was the smallest in the house, smaller than Haley's, smaller than the guest room no one ever used, even smaller than my father's office. I opened Haley's door. It wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. What did she have to hide? Her room was 3 times the size of mine, with a private bathroom, a massive walk-in closet, and a large window overlooking the tree-lined street. The decor had been changed at least 4 times since she moved in, every time she got bored of the old color. I remembered when I was 16. I asked to repaint my room just to replace the peeling beige wall with my favorite blue. Rachel sighed and said, "Painting is expensive, Flora. Maybe when things get better financially." 2 weeks later, Haley's entire room was repainted because she'd seen a new layout in a magazine. I walked to her closet. Rows of dresses, organized by color and season. Dresses worth more than my monthly paycheck. Designer shoes I'd only ever admired through store windows. Purses, jewelry, accessories, a treasure trove of luxury for a 19-year-old who had never worked a single day in her life. And my closet, if you could. Even call that cramped thing a closet, held 12 decent outfits I mixed and matched through the week. The rest were discount t-shirts, faded jeans, shoes worn down to the soles. I left Haley's room and stepped into my father and Rachel's, the master bedroom. I had never entered unless summoned to be scolded. The room was elegant, with a king-size bed, a large TV, and a bathroom with a jacuzzi tub. I opened Rachel's closet, almost the size of my entire room. Hundreds of items, many still with tags. Shoes lined up like a boutique. Purses whose price tags alone could make me dizzy. In a drawer, between imported perfumes and jewelry, I found something interesting, a bank statement. Normally, I would have never dared to look, but after learning the truth, old boundaries meant nothing. I flipped through it. Hair salon, $80 a month. Shopping, between $150 and $250. Fine dining, at least $60 every week. All charged to the joint account she shared with my father. And me counting coins to buy textbooks. I pulled out my phone and did some quick math. Rachel's personal spending alone was nearly $600 a month. 1 year, over $7,000. 15 years, more than $100,000. $100,000 spent on the luxuries of a woman living in my house, while I was constantly reminded that I was a burden to the family. I put everything back and stepped out. Each discovery peeled away another layer of glossy paint, revealing the rot, deceit, and cruelty hidden beneath the surface of family love. I sat on the living room sofa and looked at the family photos spread across the table. This time, I looked closely. Christmas photo from 3 years ago. Haley in the center, my father and Rachel hugging her tightly from both sides. I stood to the right, half my body cropped out. My forced smile obvious to anyone who cared to notice. Haley's 18th birthday. She was blowing candles on a giant cake, surrounded by friends and family. I was in the background, carrying a tray of drinks like a server. No one seemed to find it odd that the daughter of the house was serving her sister's guests. Haley's graduation, she was the star. I stood at the edge of the frame, looking like a stranger passing through someone else's celebration. I picked up the most recent photo, last year's Father's Day. Haley sat on his lap, both smiling brightly. Rachel rested her hand on his shoulder. And me, standing behind the sofa, smiling politely, clearly outside that family circle. That's when I realized, in every picture that included me, my posture was the same, shoulders slightly hunched, as if apologizing for existing. Arms folded or tucked in pockets, unsure what to do with themselves. A polite smile but empty eyes. I looked exactly how I felt, an outsider trying to squeeze into a place I never belonged. I walked into the kitchen. For the first time, I really looked inside the fridge. Expensive organic yogurt, Rachel's. Imported cheese. Off-season fruits. Wine that cost more than my week's worth of groceries. The pantry was no different. Belgian chocolate, imported cookies, premium olive oil, gourmet spices, twice the price of regular ones but tasting exactly the same. I remembered all the times I'd asked for something a little nicer to eat and got the same cold reply. "That's too expensive, Flora. There's regular food in the pantry." While reorganizing the kitchen shelves, I found something hidden behind a stack of canned corn, a glass jar stuffed with cash. 20s, 50s, hundreds, neatly rolled with rubber bands. I counted. $1,200. Cash hidden in my own house. Money probably saved from cutting corners on me. How much of it had come from the trust fund meant for my benefit? I took photos of the jar, each bill more evidence of the web of lies that had consumed my life. I went back to the office. This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened every drawer, flipped through every paper, searching for another safe, another secret. In the third drawer, I found a folder labeled Flora, Documents. My heart pounded. A whole file about me. Inside were copies of everything I had already seen in the safe, the property deed, my mother's will, the trust fund contract. But there was more. Detailed bank reports showing the account's growth over the years. Handwritten notes comparing Flora's monthly expenses to fund withdrawals used to cover them. And then I found another letter, not from my mother this time, but from the lawyer who handled her estate. "Dear Mr. Thomas Bennett, as requested, enclosed is the annual report for the trust fund belonging to Flora Helena Bennett. Current value, $41,322 US. Please note that, according to the will, the beneficiary must be informed of the trust's existence upon reaching the age of 18. Kindly contact us to schedule an explanatory meeting with Miss Flora. Sincerely, Attorney Henry Caldwell." The letter was dated 3 years ago, the year I turned 18. I should have been informed about the fund 3 years ago. 3 years in which I'd worked part-time jobs just to cover living expenses. 3 years of enduring insults about being financially dependent. 3 years of being branded a burden. There were more letters from that same lawyer, one from 2 years ago, one from last year. All asking when they could arrange the meeting with me. All ignored by my father. The last letter, dated 6 months ago, was firmer. "Dear Mr. Bennett, this is our 4th attempt to arrange the required meeting with Miss Flora. The will explicitly states the obligation to inform the beneficiary of her rights upon reaching legal age. If we do not receive a response within 30 days, we will be forced to contact Miss Flora directly to fulfill our legal duty. Sincerely, Attorney Henry Caldwell." I took my phone and looked up Caldwell and Associates law firm. Still active. Then why had he never contacted me directly? I flipped further through the file, and there it was, the answer. A letter from my father, addressed to the lawyer. "Dear Mr. Caldwell, Flora is going through a difficult phase in college, and we don't want to burden her with complicated financial matters. Moreover, she's still too immature to handle a large amount of money responsibly. I suggest waiting until she turns 25, when she'll be mature enough to take on that responsibility. Sincerely, Thomas Bennett." Immature. At 23, I was still considered too immature to know about my own money, but mature enough to work, to pay bills, to be criticized for being expensive, mature enough to be called a bastard, mature enough to be excluded from a family vacation. The last page of the file made my stomach turn. A handwritten chart titled Flora's Expenses versus Trust Profit. On the left, my monthly expenses: food, clothes, books, bus fare. Every penny carefully listed. The total barely $100 per month. On the right, trust profits never less than $160 per month. At the bottom, a scrawled note. Surplus for family expenses, about $60 per month. $60 a month. For 15 years. That's over $10,000 taken from my trust to support the very family that called me a financial burden. I closed the folder and sat on the floor, dizzy. This wasn't just deception anymore. This was theft, manipulation, cruelty, carefully planned. For 15 years, I had been brainwashed into believing I was a burden to a kind family, financially exploited by the very people living off my money, and expected to be grateful for the scraps falling from my own inheritance. And the Europe trip? $8,000 for their family vacation. How much of that came from my trust fund? Was that so-called inheritance from a distant uncle even real, or just a convenient cover for embezzlement? I grabbed my phone and called the office of Attorney Henry Caldwell. A woman's voice answered. "Good afternoon, Caldwell Law Office. How may I help you? I'd like to schedule an appointment with Mr. Caldwell." "My name is Flora Helena Bennett. He handled my mother's estate." There was a pause, then surprise in the woman's voice. "Miss Flora? Oh my God! Mr. Caldwell has been trying to reach you for years. Can you come in today? This afternoon, at 3? "I can. Thank you." In less than 24 hours, my entire life had turned upside down. I discovered I was the victim of one of the most calculated and cruel betrayals a family could commit. But I had also discovered something far more powerful. I had leverage. I had money, property, and the law on my side. For 15 years, they made me believe I had nothing, that I deserved nothing. And in just a few hours, I would know exactly what I was entitled to and how to use it to restore justice. The bastard was about to become the rightful owner of her life. Dr. Henry Caldwell's law office was in downtown Charleston, inside an old, stately building that carried the weight of time. I arrived exactly at 3 p.m., heart pounding but gaze steady. On the bus ride there, I'd rehearsed in my mind over and over how to tell this story calmly and clearly. The secretary, a silver-haired woman with a kind smile, greeted me with genuine warmth. "Miss Flora, Mr. Caldwell has been looking forward to meeting you. Please come in." The lawyer was a man in his 60s, reading glasses hanging from his neck, his expression caught between relief and concern. He stood up as I entered and extended his hand. "Miss Flora, at last we meet. Would you like some coffee?" I nodded, mostly to buy a few seconds to steady myself. He poured 2 cups, sat down, and looked at me with a fatherly gaze. "I assume you're here because you've finally learned about the trust fund?" His question froze me in place. You knew that I didn't know?" Mr. Caldwell sighed. "Miss Flora, I've been trying to arrange this meeting for 3 years. Your father always had an excuse: exams, stress, not ready yet. I began to suspect he'd never told you." "Never told me? About what?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "I only found out about the trust fund yesterday." His face went pale. "Oh my God, you mean he said nothing at all? Not just about the fund, but about the entire inheritance?" "Inheritance? What do you mean? Please, tell me everything, Mr. Caldwell." He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder with my name printed on the cover. "Miss Flora, your mother didn't just leave the house and a savings account. She left much more than that." He took out several documents. "Your mother was an only child. Your grandparents were quite wealthy. In addition to this house, she inherited 3 apartments in downtown Charleston, all currently rented out. There's also a beachfront lot in Myrtle Beach, and several fixed investments that have generated significant returns over the past 15 years. The world spun around me. 3 apartments, a piece of land, investments. All in my name, managed through the trust until I turned 25 or earlier if I declared legal independence." He handed me a paper listing everything. Total current assets, approximately $800,000. 800,000. The coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I felt nothing. $800,000. All those years counting pennies for bread, and I'd been wealthy all along. Mr. Caldwell watched me with concern. "Are you all right, Miss Flora?" I lifted my head, my voice trembling. How could my father hide all of this?" He spoke slowly. "Legally, he had the right to manage the assets until you turned 25. But morally, no. Your mother left very clear instructions that you were to be informed at 18. "Instructions?" He nodded and opened another section of the file. There's a letter your mother wrote to you, meant to be given on your 18th birthday. And there's also a video. A video? He pointed to a small USB drive on the desk. Your mother recorded a message after learning about her illness. It's been here for 15 years, waiting for you. My hands shook as I picked up the USB. 15 years, my mother's message had been hidden from me. Can I watch it now? Of course. You can use that computer. I plugged the USB into the computer and opened the single file inside. The screen was black for a few seconds, then her face appeared thinner than I remembered, her head wrapped in a scarf from the chemotherapy. But her eyes, the same eyes I saw every morning in the mirror, were still bright and gentle. She was sitting in the old living room. I recognized it immediately, the home we'd lived in before moving here. My dear daughter, Flora, her voice began, and my heart clenched. If you're watching this, it means I'm no longer there to guide you. I hope you've grown strong, smart, and happy. First, I want you to know that you are loved unconditionally. Forever. You are my greatest joy and pride. I want you to know, you never have to depend on anyone financially. Your grandparents and I worked our whole lives to ensure you could live independently and securely. She paused, coughing softly, and my heart broke seeing her so frail. Flora, you are the owner of one house, 3 apartments, a piece of land, and investments that will support you for life. Never let anyone make you feel like a burden or indebted to them. You are a wealthy and independent young woman. I trust your father to manage the assets until you're ready, but you must be informed about them when you turn 18. That is your legal right. If anyone ever tries to convince you otherwise, go to attorney Henry Caldwell, he has instructions to help you. She leaned closer to the camera, her expression firm but tender. Flora, my daughter, you are worthy. Never accept being treated as less than you deserve. You come from a line of strong, hardworking, successful women. You are the heir to a legacy of women who never bowed to anyone. Always remember that. The video ended with her blowing a kiss and saying softly, I love you, my princess. I sat staring at the black screen for several minutes, completely silent. Mr. Caldwell understood and said nothing. He knew everything, I whispered. My father knew all of this, and he chose to hide it from me. I'm afraid so, he replied quietly. And the apartments, the land, who manages them? A real estate company handles the rentals. The income has been transferred monthly to an account under your name, about $500 a month for 15 years. I quickly did the math, roughly $90,000 just from rent. $90,000, that should have been in my account, but I had never seen a cent. Where's that money? Mr. Caldwell hesitated. Your father has power of attorney over the account. He may be investing it under your name, but we should verify. How? I can request full bank statements. It'll take a few days. Please do it immediately. I want to know exactly where every dollar of mine has gone. My voice had turned firm, decisive. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing every document, every investment, every property. Mr. Caldwell patiently explained my legal rights, my options, and how I could gain full control over everything. When we were nearly done, he said, one important thing. You can declare financial independence at any time. You don't have to wait until you're 25. With a few signed papers, all assets will be transferred to your direct control. What about the house I'm living in now? It's yours. It's always been yours. Your father has no legal claim to it. If you wish, you can ask him to leave tomorrow. The words hit me like lightning. I could evict my father from my own house. I could evict his entire family if I wanted to. If I find out he used my money for personal expenses, is that a crime? Depending on the amount, yes, it could qualify as misappropriation of assets, especially if he used it for personal gain rather than legitimate investments under your name. I told him everything about the folder I found in his office, the notes showing he'd spent the surplus from my fund, Rachel's bank statements, and the cash jar hidden in the kitchen. As I spoke, Mr. Caldwell's face grew more serious. Miss Flora, this is extremely serious. If there's clear evidence that your assets were misused, we must act immediately. What should I do? First, we'll obtain the full statements to confirm where the money went. Then, if any wrongdoing is found, you can file a civil lawsuit to recover it, or even press criminal charges. And the house? Can I take full possession right away? Absolutely. I can prepare the documents today for you to become the sole legal owner. No one else's approval is needed. A surge of strength rose inside me. Mr. Caldwell, I said, I want to declare financial independence. I want full control of my assets. And I want those bank statements as soon as possible. Good. I'll prepare everything today. You can sign tomorrow morning. I paused, hand on my bag. If I want them out of the house, how much notice do I have to give, legally? For relatives, typically 30 days. But since you're the legal owner and of age, if there's a valid reason, you can ask them to leave immediately. He looked at me, voice low and steady. 15 years of emotional and financial abuse. That's a valid reason, I replied, my tone cold and certain. They made that decision long before I did. I left the office carrying a thick stack of documents and a clarity I had never felt before. The world had changed in 48 hours, and so had I. On the bus ride home, I reviewed everything. And for the first time, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted my house back, my money back, my dignity back. The next few days passed in a surreal blur. Mr. Caldwell worked with astonishing speed. Within 48 hours, I had all the paperwork needed to take full control of my assets. By the third day, the bank statements arrived, and what I saw was worse than I ever imagined. For 15 years, my father had systematically withdrawn money from my fund for personal use. Not just the $60 a month he'd noted in his records, far more than that. Home repairs that should have cost $2,000 were reported as $5,000. Educational investments for Haley didn't exist. Family medical emergencies were actually luxury vacations. In total, nearly $40,000 had been misappropriated. $40,000 that should have been invested under my name, growing for my future. I called Mr. Caldwell. Please prepare the official notice. I want my father, Rachel, and Haley to have 30 days to vacate my house. Are you certain, Flora? This is a major step. I'm completely certain. And I also want to file a lawsuit to recover every dollar that was stolen. That means pursuing criminal charges. Your father could face prison time. He stole from me for 15 years, made me believe I was a burden while living off my money. It's time he faces the consequences. Mr. Caldwell nodded. Very well. The paperwork would be ready by tomorrow. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before I planned my dream home. I walked through every room, imagining each change, each new piece of furniture, every color I'd choose. For the first time, I allowed myself to dream of a space that truly belonged to me. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. According to Haley's social media post, they'd be back around 3 p.m. I had 10 hours to prepare for the most important moment of my life. By 8 a.m., Mr. Caldwell arrived with another thick folder. The eviction notice, the document revoking my father's power of attorney, the civil suit to reclaim my assets, and for the embezzlement of nearly $40,000. A stack of papers representing legal freedom after 15 years of abuse. Flora, he said, handing me the folder. Once you file these, there's no turning back. Are you sure? Last night I dreamed of my mother. She told me she was proud that I finally found my strength. I've never been more sure of anything. He smiled softly. Your mother raised a brave woman. I hope you find the peace you deserve. After he left, I spent the next few hours putting everything in order, just the way I wanted. I removed every photo where I was pushed to the edge or half hidden, keeping only the ones where I was seen, smiling, and truly happy. I rearranged the furniture, cooked myself a proper lunch, the first meal I'd ever made without worrying about the cost of the ingredients. At 2 p.m., I called a locksmith. I need every lock in my house replaced. Can you do it today? Of course, ma'am. I'll be there within an hour. The locksmith arrived right on time and replaced 4 locks: the front door, the back door, the garden gate, and the office door. When he left, I held in my hand the only set of keys to the house. 3:15 p.m. I heard the familiar car turning into the street. My heart raced, not from fear but from anticipation. The moment of truth had come. I stood by the living room window, watching them step out tanned, cheerful, arms full of shopping bags. They looked like people returning from the perfect vacation, carefree and content. Haley rushed to the door, excited to open it. "This is weird. It won't open." She tried again. Still not working. "Dad?" My father tried his key. Nothing. Rachel too. Same result. "That's strange," I heard him mutter. "Maybe Flora locked it from inside." They began knocking gently at first, then harder. "Flora, we're home. Open the door, sweetheart." I let them wait a few minutes. I wanted them to taste the feeling of being shut out, excluded from a place they thought was theirs. Finally, I opened the living room window. They looked up, visibly relieved. "Flora, thank God," Rachel exclaimed. "Our keys don't work. Open up, will you?" "I'm sorry," I said calmly. "But I can't. Because you don't live here anymore." Haley was the first to react. "What? Don't live here? Is this some kind of joke?" "It's not a joke, Haley. This is a legal eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate my property." My father's face flushed red. "My property? Flora, have you lost your mind? This is our home." "No, Dad. This house was never yours. It's been mine since I was 5. You were only granted management authority and I revoked that. Yesterday." I tossed the documents out the window. The papers fluttered down the yard like a storm of white confetti. "Those are the official documents. Eviction notice, revocation of power of attorney, and a criminal complaint for stealing $200,000 from my trust." Rachel went pale. "Flora, what are you talking about? 200,000 what?" "The 200,000 you stole from me over 15 years, money that was supposed to build my future, spent instead on your luxury lifestyle. And probably on that European vacation." My father bent down to pick up the papers, reading line by line. His expression shifted from confusion to desperation. "Flora, you don't understand. I was just managing it for you. I'm your father. I have more experience." "No, you're a thief," I cut in. "And I'm not your daughter anymore. Bastards don't have families, right?" "Your words, remember?" Haley burst into tears. "Flora, please, where are we supposed to go? Maybe you can use the money you stole to rent somewhere else." "Oh wait, you already spent it, didn't you?" Rachel changed her tone, trying to sound gentle. "Flora, I know we've had our differences, but we're still family. Can't we talk about this like adults? Rachel, for 15 years you treated me like a servant in my own home. You spent my money on designer clothes, fine dining, and then made me feel guilty for being a burden. We have nothing to discuss." My father roared. "Flora, you can't do this. I'm your father. I have rights." "The only right you have," I said coldly, "is the right to remain silent. And you should use it soon. The police will want to speak to you about the embezzlement." "You ungrateful brat. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me, you stole from me, humiliated me, made me believe I was a burden while you lived. Comfortably off my money. 15 years I ate leftovers while you feasted on my inheritance." I opened the window wider and looked straight down at them. "You know what's funny? You always told me to be grateful for having a roof over my head. Well, now you'll get to know what it feels like not to have one." Rachel pleaded again. "At least let Haley stay. She's innocent. She had 19 years to see the truth and never spoke up. She's just as guilty." "But she's still a child. Haley is 19, an adult. And even if she weren't, that responsibility falls on you and my father, not me." I lifted the new keyring and gave it a little shake. "These are the only keys to this house. You have 30 days to remove your things. After that, whatever's left will be considered trash." "Flora, you can't throw us out on the street. For 15 years you made me feel homeless in my own house. Now you'll finally know what that feels like." I closed the window and drew the curtains. They shouted, pounded, pleaded, threatened, but I didn't open, and I never would again. I sat down on my sofa, in my living room, and listened as the noise outside slowly faded. Finally, there was silence. Not the silence of loneliness, but the silence of peace. I picked up my phone and called for pizza. I'd like a large pizza, extra of every topping, the most expensive ones. That'll be pricey, ma'am. That's fine, I said with a smile. Today I found out I can afford it. Tomorrow I'll start shopping, decorating, and rebuilding everything exactly the way I want it. I'll begin living the life that should have been mine all along. But today, just for today, I want to savor the quiet of victory. 3 months later, I woke up in a new bed, in a redesigned room, inside a house completely transformed. Sunlight streamed through the window overlooking the front garden. I had switched rooms. Haley's old bedroom was now my office. I walked barefoot across the newly polished wooden floor. Each step sounded different, no longer the hesitant steps of someone asking permission to exist, but the steady steps of someone who knows she belongs. The house was almost unrecognizable. The walls I'd knocked down to open the space, the furniture I'd personally chosen, the colors reflecting my real personality. No trace remained of the traditional style Rachel once imposed. For the first time in my life, I was living in a place that reflected me. I made myself coffee and thought about the past 3 months. It hadn't been easy. The first days after the confrontation were a storm of emotions: anger, relief, guilt, joy, blending together until I was exhausted. My father had tried everything. First came the rage, shouting, insults, threats outside the door. Then, emotional manipulation, text messages about family ties, forgiveness, "You're destroying everything." Then came begging Rachel, pleading for another chance, promising that things would be different. I ignored them all. The criminal case was underway. Mr. Caldwell had no trouble proving the embezzlement. My father hadn't been careful. The evidence was everywhere. $200,000 withdrawn over 15 years, plus interest and restitution, nearly $300,000 to be repaid. They managed to rent a small apartment in the suburbs. Haley had to drop out of college, no more money for private tuition. Rachel sold most of her designer clothes to make ends meet. My father was fired once the case became public. I learned all this through mutual acquaintances, neighborhood gossip, and Haley's gloomy social media posts, but I didn't feel even a trace of regret. Sometimes people ask if I think I was too harsh, if I miss my family, if I've ever thought about forgiving them and starting over. The answer is always the same: no. They had countless chances to treat me with respect, dignity, and love, but they chose consciously to humiliate, diminish, and steal from me. It wasn't a single mistake or misunderstanding. It was a systematic pattern of abuse lasting more than a decade. Some people don't deserve forgiveness. Some families don't deserve to be preserved. I finished my coffee and walked into my office, the room that once belonged to Haley. I'd quit my part-time bookstore job. With $800,000 wisely invested, my monthly interest income was higher than a 40-hour-a-week paycheck. But I didn't sit idle. I enrolled in online courses in asset management, real estate investment, and the stock market. My mother had given me a solid foundation, but I intended to build an empire on it. I also started volunteering for a nonprofit that helps teenagers suffering from domestic abuse. When I realized my story wasn't unique, that thousands of children were being manipulated and mistreated by their parents, I found a new purpose. Each week, I talked to kids living the life I once had. I told them my story, that they could break free from the cycle of abuse, that they were stronger than they thought. Some sat silently, eyes wide. Some cried. Some began to believe again. A 17-year-old girl once asked me, "How did you find the courage to stand up to your family like that?" "Because I realized they were never really family," I told her. Family doesn't steal, doesn't humiliate, doesn't make you feel like a burden. They were people who shared a roof and some DNA with me. The truth is, I have a new family now. Dr. Henry Caldwell, like the father I never had, always ready with advice and legal support. Dr. Marianne Cooper, the therapist helping me heal 15 years of wounds and learn how to build healthy relationships. My friends at the nonprofit. And Lucas. I met Lucas in an investment class. He's 2 years older than me, manages his family's assets, and has a calm, grounded presence that drew me in immediately. When I told him my story, I expected pity or shock. Instead, he said, "You're the bravest person I've ever met." No pity, no condescension, just genuine admiration for a woman who fought the world to reclaim her life. We've been dating for 2 months, and for the first time, I understand what it means to be loved for who I am. Not in spite of who I am, but because of who I am. Lucas constantly encourages me to dream, to be strong, to believe in myself. Whenever I doubt myself, he reminds me, "You started with nothing and built an incredible life. Just imagine what you could do if you fully believed in your own power." He's right. For 15 years, I was taught to see myself as small, dependent, and overly grateful, too afraid to dream big. Now, at 23, I'm learning how to dream without limits. My plan is to expand my real estate portfolio, invest in promising projects, and travel to places I once only dreamed of. I have a list of goals I'd never allowed myself to write before, and now I have both the resources and the courage to achieve them one by one. But the biggest dream has already come true, the feeling of living honestly in a life that's truly mine. At 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. The delivery man brought the abstract paintings I'd ordered for the living room just because I liked them, not because they fit someone else's taste. As I hung them up, I wondered, did my mother ever imagine this seeing me, independent, free, strong? Did she know how much pain I'd have to endure to find my strength again? I believe she did. And I like to think she's proud of me now. By noon, Lucas arrived for lunch. He always brought flowers not because I asked, but because he liked seeing me smile when I received them. Today it was sunflowers, my favorite. "How was the meeting with the nonprofit?" he asked, tossing the salad. "It was great. They want me to consider taking the youth program coordinator position. It's a real job, paid, meaningful work. Will you take it?" "I'm seriously thinking about it. It would be a way to turn everything I went through into something good for others." "You have a gift for turning pain into purpose," he smiled. "That's what I admire most about you." After lunch, we sat on the balcony, watching people pass along the street, my street. "Flora," he asked softly, "can I ask you something real? Do you ever miss them, your old family?" It's a question many have asked, and with each day my answer grows clearer. "I miss the idea of them," I said slowly. "I miss the illusion of having a family that loved me unconditionally. But they were never that, so I don't miss who they really were. I only grieve for what they could have been." "And do you think you made the right choice?" For the first time in my life, I wake up every morning without that heavy stone in my stomach. I get to be myself without apologizing, and I have relationships built on real love, not obligation or convenience. How could that ever be wrong? He took my hand. "It couldn't. You're incredible, Flora. I hope you know that." "I do. Finally, at 24, I know exactly who I am." Later that afternoon, after Lucas left, I sat in my newly replanted garden. Red roses replaced the old patchy grass. A small fountain murmured softly, and a table and chairs waited for me to read or work outdoors. My phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. "Flora, it's Dad. Please, give me 5 minutes. I need to explain." I stared at the message for a long time. 3 months ago, that text might have made me tremble with fear, guilt, confusion. I would have asked myself, should I give him a chance? Am I being too cruel? Is there any excuse that can justify 15 years of abuse? Not anymore. I deleted the message. Some doors are meant to stay closed forever. And some people don't deserve even 5 minutes of your life. As the sun set, I went back inside and prepared dinner just for myself, exactly the way I liked it. While the food cooked, I walked through the house, turning on the lights room by room. Each room now told my story, reflecting my taste, my dreams, and my rebirth. There was no trace left of the years filled with humiliation or control. I had dinner at the living room table, watching Netflix on the TV I had chosen and bought myself. Before going to bed, I walked to my window and looked down at the street glowing under the lamps. Across from me, 3 houses away, a family was coming home, parents and 2 little kids, carrying shopping bags, laughing together. A real family. For a moment, my heart ached, a brief pang of grief for what could have been. But only for a moment. Because I finally understood something important. Family isn't about shared blood or living under the same roof. Family is made of the people who choose to love you, respect you, and walk beside you. And I found my real family: Dr. Henry Caldwell, Dr. Marianne Cooper, my friends from the organization, and Lucas, the people who chose me, just as I chose them. I closed the curtains and got ready for bed. Tomorrow would be another day in my new life, another day to build dreams, make my own decisions, and live as myself, without needing anyone's permission. Not every story ends with a fairy tale happy ending. Some stories end with justice, and sometimes justice is sweeter than happiness, because happiness can be temporary, dependent on circumstance. But justice lasts forever. After 15 years of waiting, I've finally found my justice. And if anyone asked me now, was it worth it? Was everything you endured worth it? I would answer without hesitation. Absolutely. Worth every tear, every sleepless night, every fear, because now I am truly free. And once you've tasted real freedom, you will never again accept living as a prisoner, even if that prison was built by the hands of people who once claimed they loved you. Sometimes, the most painful thing isn't losing a family, but realizing they were never truly your family to begin with. But the beautiful thing is, you can rebuild that family not with blood, but with love, respect, and choice. I spent 15 years learning that justice isn't reclaiming your assets, it's reclaiming yourself. And maybe that's the journey many of us are on. Learning to stand up, not to seek revenge, but to make sure we're never hurt like that again. And what about you? Have you ever had to walk away from a family to find yourself again? Share your thoughts in the comments, because maybe your story could be the strength someone else needs. If you'd like to keep hearing stories of courage, healing, and justice, stay with me so we can keep walking these journeys together. Because sometimes, all it takes is the right story at the right time to help someone find their light again.